Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, January 10th County Commission meeting. If you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First of all, thank you for your patience this morning. We were involved in a building committee conversation, so we were all a little late and we only got 1/3 of the way through the meeting, so we'll reschedule the rest of that. But thank you for being here. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones. There's meeting documents next to Commissioner Bender. If you need a listening device, Robert would be able to help you with that. With that, we'll go to routine business. The first item is to consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any amendments or changes? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 2 is to approve the commission meeting minutes from January 3rd.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any changes? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 3 is bills to be paid of $632,251.61. Is there a
bills.
Thank you.
Second.
Sorry. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. There's no reports. Personnel action, we have routine personnel action. Is there a motion?
Move to approve routine action.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No applications for abatement, no notices and requests, no planning and zoning notices, no petition for compromise.
Yay.
Now we're to opportunities for public comment. If anyone has any comments to make about an item that is not on the agenda, they're able to do that now. Otherwise, we'll go to the regular agenda. Nobody's moving, and it's after 9 o'clock, so first item will be a public hearing to consider the retail on-off sale malt beverage license application for M&M Gaming, doing business as a State Line Casino with that legal address in Rowena. Olivia?
We received an application from M&M Gaming. As you stated, they are State Line Casino in Rowena, and they've made the payments they need to and filled out all the proper forms. There have been no concerns brought forward from any of the departments, such as Sheriff's Office, State's Attorney, Planning and Zoning, so I'd recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the malt beverage company that would like to make comments? This is a public hearing, and anyone here opposed to their beverage license application? Nobody's moving. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Mr. Karski.
Yeah, comment, just when we do these for the city, we had the applicant in, and I did have a question for the applicant. It would be nice, and I don't know who these are routed through, if they come through you, okay? In the future, if we have these type of applications, let the applicant know that they should attend, because one of the problems that we ran into in the municipality was on-premises smoking rooms, and that's just a question I had for this applicant. Are they going to allow smoking within their establishment in violation of state law? So when we do get applicants like this for the future, I would like to see the applicant present for questions.
Commissioner Heiberger, go ahead.
I was going to say, Commissioner Karski, a lot of times they are here. It's actually kind of surprises me no one is here, because most times there is someone here to speak.
Okay.
Do you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to state that we always encourage them to come, but we can't require them to.
Correct.
Okay.
If you have any concerns, we can ask them to come next week.
You know, I think it would be appropriate to delay this for a week so that they can come. I think it's important. It's their business, and they're asking us to grant them a license. And once they have the license, we have very little recourse as to anything that we can do. So to have questions answered up front, I think, are important.
If they say they're not going to allow smoking and they do, we have what, a year before we can make any changes?
Well, they can be referred to Department of Revenue as a violation by the county commission. The Revenue Department will investigate and make a determination of their continued licensure, so to speak. So it doesn't necessarily foreclose any action on the license for a year, just maybe by you independently it does.
Okay.
So, how's that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I believe in the past, we did have the power to suspend licenses, and we did for a business that had failed a test twice in a year, and then they changed the law so only Pure can take it
Yep.
away.
That's correct. Yep,
But that again is after a violation.
correct.
I would be okay with letting this go for this week, I guess.
Okay.
I was just going to remind you needed a substitute motion if you wanted a different action.
Okay,
but
I think we
sounds
do
like
have
we're
a
not.
motion and a second to approve, correct?
Yes, we have a motion, a second to
One more
approve.
comment.
Yes.
You know, Mr. Chair, sometimes we have like 11 businesses that are renewing or whatever, and, you know, maybe 2 of them show up. And I do know that the sheriff has gone after a couple of businesses that did allow smoking initially. And you know there's a problem when you walk in and there's a cigarette butt floating in a beer. But anyway, it does seem like we don't have them all come in, but maybe we ought to.
And not maybe, if I may, not necessarily for renewals, but specifically on when we're approving a new one would be my greatest concern, because that's where we're opening the door.
We will strongly suggest that they come.
My concern is, excuse me, I'm not going to support that if you make a substitute motion, just because I feel like we have a 9 o'clock meeting and it doesn't always work for them. And I think that they do come when necessary and when, I mean, if it works for them, but I think it is harder for them to get here. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what their reasoning was for not being here this morning.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? If not, we do have a motion and a second to approve the on-sale, off-sale malt leverage license application for M&M Gaming. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 11 is a public hearing on the second reading to consider the adoption of the 2017 floodplain management ordinance. Good morning, Kevin.
Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. As you just heard, this is to amend or adopt a new floodplain ordinance. Recently, FEMA has issued 19 new insurance rate panel maps that adjust the floodplain in the county. And as we are adopting these new panel maps, we have been requested to make some changes to the ordinance as well, some amendments, and those have been presented to you as such. If you note here, we have the online map here that shows where the changes are. In the city, a lot of the changes are removing out of the floodplain as they have certified the levee to do so now. But with the new mapping, they've taken more information and new modeling, which shows that there will be further backup north of the interstate into the rural area, which will take on some of the red area north of the interstate.
Okay, any questions for Kevin? Again, this is
Mr.
a...
Chair? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Kevin, we have to adopt this because this is what FEMA is telling us, right?
Yes, and FEMA, the state, and FEMA have both looked at our ordinance, and they have approved what we have presented here, as well as our state's attorney's office has approved what we presented here.
Any other questions? Commissioner Karski?
Do we have an idea how many structures are going to be going into that red zone?
You know, I counted them once. It was approximately 150.
Wow.
It was quite a few. It wasn't more than that. I think it was a little bit less, but it was quite a few.
And all these property owners are aware of the impact of
FEMA had a public hearing on July 28th of 2015 as the kind of the start to this whole process or part of, and they were all made aware of this map. It was there at the meeting and of the changes.
Other questions? Again, this is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to make comments for or potentially against, we would be able to hear those. Is moving. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, and then I guess I have a comment.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2017 floodplain management ordinance.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
You know, the
Lars?
FEMA is taking out quite a few properties from being in the floodplain, even though if the levee would break, they'd be doing a New Orleans deal. I sort of wonder a little bit if when they take these houses out, then they start losing the insurance premiums that build up their flood reserves, and so they have to add some in order to make sure they're balancing their books. In other words, I'm saying that FEMA may be looking at it from financing their own flood stuff, because you're either going to flood or not, depending that whatever the chart that they give us.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes, Scott Anderson, Planning Director. I just also wanted to make the County Commission aware that that later this year, you will be going through this exact same process again, because FEMA will be issuing new maps for the area which is being studied. It's called 9 Mile Creek. This is in the very southwest part of town by 57th and T. Ellis Road. There's a small area in the county that's being, the maps are being changed, but as part of that study project that the city's going through down on 57th and further south into T, some of our maps will once again be changed. They'll issue new maps with new dates, and we'll go through this whole process again, readopting our ordinance and re-advertising it. So I don't want you to think that something is unusual, but we have to adopt these maps by March 3rd, and then in August we'll get our new maps with the new dates, and we'll be readopting them with those new dates as well. So you'll be seeing this again. I just didn't want you to think that something wasn't right, and letting the public know that there'll be another round of this coming up in the next 6 to 8 months.
Thank you. I think.
Can you show us about where 9 Mile Creek is on that map, so we have just
Yeah,
an awareness?
And Scott, there was a presentation on this
Yes.
a few
FEMA
months ago, right?
has appeared before both the city and county commissions, and has sort of outlined the time frame, the schedule, the reasons, and so forth. I think, I'm not sure, it's right on 57th. I think it's primarily impacts agricultural land. There's actually no development there, which is going to be impacted in the city. All of the development that's going to be impacted with the next study, which they're calling 9 Mile Creek, is in Sioux Falls, south of 57th, so it's actually in Lincoln County. And then it runs down into T, so it's quite a big project, but it's just a very minute area that is impacted in the county. And it's all agricultural farmland, so there's no structures that are going to be impacted with that study. But we have to formally go through the entire process, because when FEMA updates those maps, they stamp a new date on them and give us the new date, and those date numbers and panel numbers are referenced in our ordinance. So that's the reason for the changes.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? We do have a motion and a second to approve the adoption of this floodplain management ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 12 is a public hearing and a second reading of the proposed text amendments to rural addressing ordinances. Scott?
Good morning. Once again, Scott Anderson, County Planning Department. On December 6th, you authorized the hearing of a public hearing to be held today in reference to adopting some small minor changes to our rural addressing ordinance, which is MC 21-93. This was last changed, I think, in 2006 when we started implementing the blue and white addressing signs instead of the green and white. A request has come forth from the County Highway Department to make a small amendment to the ordinance, and that would be in section 2A. And the request is to change the wording on how townships are charged for signs. And I would be glad to answer any questions. And Shannon Schultz is also here, and he is probably a little bit more familiar with the request, as it was a request that came out of the County Highway Department. So we're here to answer any questions for you, and it is a public hearing. At the last meeting, I will also comment that at the December 6th meeting, you specifically asked me to contact the townships and let them know. That afternoon, on December 6th, I sent a formal letter, the hearing notice, and a copy of the ordinance to every township supervisor in the county. So they were notified then again. And we've published published notices in the hearing, published hearing notices in the papers. So I did fulfill your request that we contact the townships directly.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott or for Shannon?
So Scott, did you get any feedback from any of the townships? Did anybody contact you?
No one contacted me. I know that I believe there's a couple of townships that are here. They may want to speak, but I didn't receive any direct communication from any of the township supervisors.
Okay. Shannon, do you have any comments?
Happy New Year, Commissioners. Welcome, Mr. Karski. Shannon Schultz, Department of Highways Assistant Superintendent. Yes, I have a comment. This is strictly a housekeeping item. The state paid for the replacement of all signs in our county and townships. That included the Green Street intersection signs. And under that contract that the state had with the townships and all entities receiving monies for those signs, it was explicitly stated that responsibility for maintenance lies with jurisdictional authority. And so really all it is a housekeeping item, because the townships, just like the county, is under contract to maintain the signs that have been installed with state money. Having said that, there are a few township people here. They're welcome to speak. I don't know if they want to. Yes?
Just a second. I would
Okay.
see if anybody has any questions for Shannon. Does anyone have any questions for Shannon?
Jen, I do remember that was part of it, because I think originally when we were going through this whole process, there was possibly Grand Meadow had not signed off on it, and they were the only township in the whole entire state that hadn't signed off, and then eventually they did
Correct.
come around and do it.
All 23 townships and all communities less than 5,000 participated in the county.
And I was one that raised a question last week, because before the county was putting them up and the townships were reimbursing them, and now we just switched it to make them responsible. And my only question was, did townships have the staff to put the signs back up again? And that was my question last week. And obviously there's township people here, so maybe they can answer that question.
Any other questions for Shannon? If not, we would be happy to have comments from the townships if they'd like to come forward, either for or against. We'll put those together. And you do need to identify yourself.
Nathan Howe, Highland Township.
Thank you.
Warren Sorensen, Palisade, and I also currently chair the Minnehaha County Association of Towns and Townships, and very much enjoy the relationship we have with the County Commission. Twice a year, we always invite you to our meetings, and Jeff, I have to say, last fall was the first time I've ever seen you miss. It was the first time we didn't have anybody, But maybe there was something on your guys' calendar that, but we sure enjoy it when you guys come. When this room is usually filled with people from the townships, and they just really enjoy very much hearing from you people, hearing the concerns. And I think Jeff's been there every meeting and knows that when I run the meeting, you will be treated with the utmost of respect, and nobody will be attacked. So we invite you next time, if it works on your calendar, to join us.
I appreciate that comment, Orrin, and honestly, I think I went to visit my grandchildren in Florida, and so once every 10 years, that happens.
Well, then you were where you should be. As far as the wording, we all did sign, and I had Shannon clarify for me again, with a lot of words, and you sometimes forget. I knew that we signed that we would accept free all the traffic signs, and then when they needed replacement, it would fall on us. I did not know for sure if that also was the street signs, and Shannon and I have a great relationship, and Shannon said yes, and I sure know he must be right. I guess a couple concerns. Number one, it does say in here that in case where a township road intersects with a state highway, I'm toward the bottom in the dark print, the new wording, about the third line down, in the case where a township road intersects with a state highway, the county shall continue to repair and replace those street signs. I guess one question we might have is, what about where a township road intersects with a county road? Whose jurisdiction would it be there?
We'll get a professional answer from the person right behind you.
So the answer to Orrin's question is it's within the county highway jurisdiction. So it's in our right of way, it's our jurisdiction, it's our responsibility. Okay. So that the wording about in the change about the state highway is just kind of an operational agreement we have with the state. So it's kind of an anomaly, but it doesn't override what we're doing with the townships now.
Okay. Would it be good to add the word county in there in case that should ever come up?
I'm not opposed to it. I don't.
Good point. You have a concern about that?
You can just add with a state or county highway.
Sure.
I know some people from Edison were sure concerned about that question. That was one of the main calls I had on that. So please consider that. A second concern is, yes, we very much appreciate all the new signs. For those of you who might drive through rural countries, I go to a little country church called Split Rock, and if you go on the winding road from Split Rock over toward the subsequent road, I think there's 32 signs.
Be sure to
I believe
use
there's 32 signs, and I don't think we knew to what extent. I mean, if the culverts are wide enough, there's less necessary of the delineators, but there's at least 3, 1, 2, 3 before a culvert, at least 3 after. Every curve has 4 or 5 chevrons. I got a lot of heat at the last fall's meeting, and I guess I said this, and Shannon was there, he heard it, and probably DJ also. When we were talking about trees a few years ago, I said, what's more important, a tree or your granddaughter or grandson's life? One thing now about these roads, you could drive those roads at night and during a storm and never been down that road before, and I think you could keep your car on the road. Maintainer operators are very, very concerned. And one of the concerns we have is with the multiple number of signs. I think state law reads that if a sign goes down and you don't know about it, there's a grace period. But with replacing these signs, we're very, very nervous and about the time period. And in the spring when we're farming, planting corn, and in the fall we're running the combine, who gets out there and does that? I mean, no longer is it a steel fence post this tall. These things are this tall. And so in some discussions with Shannon, I asked Shannon if it'd be possible if all the townships voluntarily wanted to go together and have someone and to do that for us, that we hire. And that, of course, isn't in your realm of responsibility, but it certainly would be ours. It would sure reduce some of the nervousness that we all have because of the multitude of signs that we didn't expect. over the years, the township has slowly been given a few more responsibilities. We don't shirk from them. Used to be driveways and culverts were county, now they're ours. Now these signs are ours, and definitely the role and responsibility of supervisors has changed. We're taking a lot more responsibility, and actually we're quite nervous about it. Shannon had a good suggestion. Maybe we all go together and pool and hire one company or go into contract with one company, but upon a phone call, they're out there within so many hours to replace that sign at that intersection, and maybe, you know, you and Highland or me and Edison might have to be there to show them where to put the sign or whatever, but those are some things we're working on. But it is a big concern for us. Our people are very, very nervous, and we appreciate all the help in the past. And if you look at the part that's crossed out on here, I want to say thank you to the county. The township shall reimburse the county for all costs associated. Oftentimes, you guys have not billed us, and we very much appreciate that. I also want to say, while I'm here, on the Palisade Township Road, we're meeting about that at 11 o'clock today. The state has not done their job. There's one reason that road is paved to the Palisades State Park, because it's a state park. The state did nothing this year. You did a whole heck of a lot, and I want to thank you. It kind of bothers me that the county had to be the one to step up. We couldn't be more proud of our relationship with you, but it's wrong that the county had to step up and not the state. And that's something we need to work on to change. The state needs to start to take responsibility for roads to their state parks. And maybe with your help, we can do something about that. Anything else?
Thank you for your comments, and we do appreciate our relationship with you. If there's any other comments, we'd love to hear those. You do need to identify yourself.
Eugene Even, Wellington Township. Yeah, all these delineators, I don't disagree with anything Warren was saying and all this, but my comment is the roads in the townships with all these signs we put up now and stuff, it's hard to get snow removed. They put, you know, the snowplow come by, 14-foot wing, what's it gonna do? Bing, 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 bing. You know, you can't pick up every 10 feet to get the snow off the road is my concern. And I guess as far as the street signs and stuff, I think the county should take care of them if we gotta take care of all these other ones. But that's just my comment, thanks.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would have to agree with these fellas about those delineators around the culverts. You know, you can't mow, it's really excessive, but I think this is an example of where federal regulations, you know, think about when we had to put in those rumble strips, which are hard on bicyclists on our rural roads, et cetera. It just is overdone.
Scott?
Mr. Chairman and County Commission, I just wanted to sort of refocus the discussion on, this is a rural addressing ordinance, which really deals with the blue and white addressing signs. What's being talked about with the delineators and the other signs isn't really addressed or maintained through this ordinance. This really only deals with the green and white street signs and the blue and white addressing signs. So if it's culverts or signing for culverts and that type of stuff, that's done through the county highway department and is not part of this ordinance. So I just wanted to make sure that we all knew that.
Commissioner Heiberger?
I just had a question more or less for Kirsten. Kirsten, can we add that state or county highway change without this going back to another public hearing or something? Can we change the wording without it having to be republished?
Yeah, you can do the readings on this and amend it at the time of adoption. So you can add state or county highway in both of those clauses within, if that's your desire to do so today. I can tell you that its legal effect is the default under state law is that it is the county's, in my legal opinion, it's the county's responsibility either way. If it makes the townships feel better about that, I mean, I have no concerns with that, but the default is if it's part of our county right away and we adopt the ordinance as it reads, my understanding is it's exactly what all the parties understand it to be here today.
Well, I would make a motion to approve with that change of putting just state or county highways, just because it makes the townships feel more comfortable.
I'll second that.
And that is in section 2A, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Any other comments? We have a motion to approve with that change. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Thank you for coming, and thanks for your comments.
Commissioner Benega,
Yes,
could I just ask a question about this ordinance to Scott, and I promise it won't
certainly.
be a big
Go
deal.
ahead.
Scott, in just reading this, and when they talk about in section 4, 5, and 6 about signs, it talks about having the numbers displayed on rural residents. Are rural residents supposed to have the numbers of their house and on their outbuildings?
On the house, yes, they're supposed to have a sign on the house that also repeats the same number that is reflected on the blue sign on the front of the on the property.
And I would tell you there's probably, I don't know if there's even 1% of the people out there that has that, and so I'm wondering if maybe this is a discussion we should have later.
We can.
I doubt there's anyone, unless you're in a subdivision where there's lots of houses. If you're just a lone farmhouse, I doubt any of those people have a number on their house. We have them on our mailboxes, and we have them on the end of our road, but it can be a discussion later, just.
It can
thank you.
be, and I'll be glad to address that. We can look at that. I think if you go into like newer like subdivisions like Split Rock Heights,
Right.
or some other like Songbird Acres, if you look, a lot of the new houses have like those concrete monument signs that are usually put right by the garage doors. That was sort of the intent of the ordinance, so we can look at that. I'll be glad to do that for you.
Thank you.
Could you send a code enforcement officer out to Cindy's house to check?
I think Cindy's
go
correct.
paint it.
I think Commissioner Heiberger's correct that there's probably many, many properties that,
Yeah.
and it's probably more of it's in the ordinance. It's really to be helpful for emergency responders. So if they are in a subdivision, they can easily see that, oh, I am in the right house because that number's right on the garage too,
Yep,
or on the house.
thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, I thought Kirsten had his.
Oh, just my question was: is it the zoning designation that makes that a requirement, or is it all rural homes? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think Cindy has hers painted on the curb in front by her sidewalk.
Good comment. Item 13 is to consider a motion to supplement the Human Services budget, ASN number 21137, in the amount of $37,833 for emergency food and shelter program allocation. Jamie,
Morning, Jamie Phelps, Human Services.
good morning.
Any questions? Oh, there might be, the information was submitted prior to the auditor's office becoming aware of interest that had hit that account when the money hit the account. Now, I believe it was $2.83 in interest that hit that account, and we found out after the fact, so the actual supplement is $37,835.83. Just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and you had that.
Absolutely right. It does say that on the description, but the agenda item's just a hair different, so.
Okay.
That $2.83 just messed up our whole general fund budget.
Any questions on the supplement? This is the annual supplement for the EFSP. It's Emergency Food and Shelter Program. That's there to help communities in South Dakota supplement or enhance the services for the homeless in the community. And we are the LRO, or the lead recipient organization for our jurisdiction. We automatically receive this award each year, annually. And a couple years back, it was identified that one of the major needs in the community was the shelter for the homeless. And we had a lot of folks that we were doing motels for and that were out there on the streets and things like that. And the Bishop Dudley House was created, and that's come about to help meet nearly all of those needs in the past couple of years. And so that's what we have decided this year to put the funding towards, is to supplement and to enhance that, so we can assist as many homeless out there as possible, so everybody has a bed no matter what the situation is. And they're out of the cold and that type of thing, to meet that unmet need.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Karski?
So, am I hearing you correctly that this money will be a pass-through then to the Bishop Dudley House? Is that what you said, or?
Going to be what?
Pass-through to the Bishop Dudley House, is that?
Correct.
Okay, good. I was concerned, or I was wondering how that was going to be spent. We have so many good organizations that can do a better job than we probably can as a county, so I'm glad to hear that that money will be going through that purpose, so thank you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of organizations that do rent and utilities and food and that type of stuff in the community, but you know, that's a real big need, is that emergency shelter piece for somebody who just ends up homeless out of the for various reasons and is on the street or whatnot. So
Any other questions, Commissioner?
Just as a follow-up question to that, Jamie, the way I understand this is it's not just a direct pass-through, that Bishop Dudley House does actually account to the county or to this group for the services that are provided. And so there is some oversight to it. It doesn't just automatically go to Bishop Dudley, but that's where the intent is, that if services are provided at Bishop Dudley, it's intended to cover those services.
correct. Okay. Yeah, we are the lead recipient organization, so you know, we're responsible for managing the paperwork and any compliance issues and that type of thing, making sure we can clear an audit from the feds. And this program is under the FEMA umbrella. I know we were talking about FEMA earlier, but Emergency Food and Shelter is under the FEMA umbrella, the national FEMA.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Barth.
Jamie, you mentioned paperwork. Is there an onerous burden on paperwork on these type grants?
Very little.
Great.
Very little administrative
Great.
time on this type of situation. And it's limited in terms of what you can do with the policy and the regulations of what you can fund. But you can do things like rent, utilities, and food. But when you do those things, there's a lot more paperwork and a lot more administrative time.
If we do it, it's a lot more paperwork. So passing it over to Bishop Dudley saves us on the paperwork, or?
Oh, no, we can't supplant our budget. We can't.
Sure.
Yeah, we can only supplement. So, you know, if we can help, we can funnel it through another agency or another vendor to help supplement what we're doing, or to meet an unmet need, but we couldn't spend it on rent and thereby lessen our budget on what we're spending on rents, or supplant our budget. That's against the regs.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the budget supplement, if you will, for $37,835.83. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 14 is to authorize the Director of Equalization to purchase a 2017 Chevy Malibu for $19,170 from Beck Motors, and two 2017 Ram pickups from Wagner Auto in the amount of $22,889 each. Good morning.
Good morning, Diane Reckma, Equalization Office. I'm asking for authorization to approve these three vehicles. It was approved in my 2017 budget. These are replacing three vehicles that are going for surplus.
Any questions for Diane?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve those purchases of the Chevy Malibu and the two Ram pickups. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Thanks,
Thank you.
Diane.
It's tough for any department head to get these kinds of things in their budget, so congratulations.
Item 15 are liaison reports. Does anyone have a liaison report, Commissioner?
I just have a brief update. We had the Homeless Advisory Board meeting yesterday, and Helpline came in to do a presentation on the Sioux Empire Network of Care, which was funded through a Bush Foundation community grant. They have funding through June of 2017. They had 6 nonprofit organizations that signed on, and what this allowed them to do is purchase software that allows all these nonprofit services that are providing community services to have one intake form and then to have the different nonprofits be able to communicate with one another so that as somebody works through our system, they can, they don't have to tell their story to every single entity that they go to. And it also helps the nonprofits to see whether, you know, kind of puts another check and balance in the system to make sure that people are getting the services they need by looking at their needs, but also that they're, you know, that there's some accountability built in, that if they've told them that they got a service somewhere else, that they're able to double check on that. The Bishop Dudley House is the last organization, and they're hopefully going to go online here this quarter. They've had great success with it. The nonprofits that have been involved in it have been very, you know, while it's very burdensome to get it up to, you know, kind of get onboarding done once they've got their people into the system, it's been great, and they found that there's a lot of reporting capabilities that they can then utilize. That funding will run out in June. They're in the process of looking for some additional funding. The helpline really is just serving as an administrator for this, but they are going out to some corporations and looking at some different funding models to keep that going. From the county's perspective, it appears that it's been a great way of allowing, helping the citizens of our community that are in need of these services, help them navigating the system in a little a more user-friendly manner. So,
Can I,
Commissioner Heiberger?
just a question. So does the helpline house that software, or is it like if you went into one of the nonprofits, they would log in there and that just would end up in that database, and the database is connected to all?
the helpline has a full-time person that administers it overall and helps basically serves as a consultant to the nonprofits, but an end user, a participant, a person can go into any one of those facilities, and the facility does the initial intake.
Great.
Any other questions?
That's probably as much as I really could be trusted to inform, but it was very informative, and I have some information. It was Betsy Schuster did most of the presentation, did a really nice job.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Commissioner Heiberger?
One that, from the fair, that they had, one of their furnaces needed repair this last week in the expo building, and that they said it was probably $3,000 to $5,000 of unbudgeted expenses. At some point, I think we need to make probably a list of what long-term repairs need to be done out at the fairgrounds. In years past, I think long before this commission, they funded repairs out at the fairgrounds at a lot larger tune of money than we do currently. And so I think there's continues to be larger repairs as the fair has been able to keep up with some of the smaller stuff. I think there's some larger issues that we need to look at going forward, but I think that's a conversation for a different day. So.
Any other liaison reports? Commissioner Barth?
So in planning, the city of Crooks notified us of updated platting jurisdiction that they've declared, and that it's quite an extensive area within the county. And Robert, do you happen to have a map to show us? It appears that they just want to make sure that any economic development that happens belongs to in their area. And I guess maybe Scott, you could tell me if you know what their notification of this jurisdiction means. Do they then have to concur with us, or do they have that dotted line there around this half circle around the community of Crooks shows the area that they're now putting into their economic region. I'm not sure how else to describe it.
So let me, if I may, Commission, give you a little bit of a quick history of how this sort of has unfolded. On December 12th, the City of Crooks enacted their platting jurisdiction, which they can under South Dakota law 11-626. And under Section 3 of that same law, they are obligated to inform the auditor of this adoption, which they did on, they sent a letter to the auditor on December 27th, and he forwarded me the information last Tuesday on January 3rd. This greatly surprised me because I, as the county planning director and our planning department, if we do have a joint plating jurisdiction, as you can see, we have one with Hartford, with Brandon, and the City of Sioux Falls. From a maintenance perspective, it's much easier for my office and me to determine whether a piece of property is in or out if you have a nice crisp line of a section line or a road. When you have wide sweeping arcs of a jurisdiction, it becomes a little bit more complicated for me to determine, well, is that in or out? And it's a very large area, probably larger than what would reflect the City of Crooks's growth area. And that's the intent of a plating jurisdiction. To give you a little history, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but the reason for a joint plating jurisdiction is when a municipality is growing, they would like to make sure that new subdivisions that are platted and created outside of the municipality but relatively close to the municipality, that their infrastructure meets the same criteria as the cities. So when that subdivision is annexed into the city, it's streamlined, it's seamlessly streamlined into the city. You have the same width of streets and the same width of sidewalks, so it can be easily maintained by that municipality. In this instance, for instance, they can take a 3-mile area, and what they have done is they have taken the entire 3-mile area from the furthest point of their corporate limits, except where it is bumping into Sioux Falls' jurisdiction. And then under state law, it says that they have to stop. If they do not have an agreement with the other municipality, they have to stop equidistance between the two. So that's why there's that little gap that is between Crooks and the City of Sioux Falls. Ideally, and we've had this conversation with the City of Crooks right here in this room, ideally, it would have been so much better if the City of Crooks and the City of Sioux Falls would have negotiated a jurisdiction similar to the way that Brandon did. You can see Brandon and Sioux Falls' jurisdiction abut right up against each other. So ideally, that's what they should do, and because it is likely that both the City of Crooks and the City of Sioux Falls it will continue to grow in that northwest area. And from just a planning perspective, it would be so much better if they would discuss that right now and decide whose sphere of influence that will ultimately be. And that's not to say that it will be annexed into the City of Sioux Falls or the City of Crooks within the next 3 to 5 years. This could be something that could be 20, 25, 30 years out. But then we'll at least know who is going to service that area: roads, water, sewer, and utilities. So I have asked, as part of that 11.626, South Dakota statutes 11.626, they are supposed to have adopted a subdivision regulations, which dictates how plats are to be adopted, and I've asked for that, and I have not received it from the City of Crooks, because I want to make sure that they do have a subdivision regulations. So what this will mean for the public is, if you are a farmer that's 3 miles north of the city of or fall within this jurisdiction, and you want to plat off a parcel of land, a homestead or a farmstead, that property owner will have to go to the City of Crooks, and they will have to review the plat. It will need to meet whatever requirements the City of Crooks has adopted within their subdivision regulations, and then I will also review it to make sure it meets our subdivision regulations. I will sign off on it, and the City of Crooks, when they feel it has met their criteria, they will sign off on that plat. And then that property owner will have to file it at the Register of Deeds. It's not my responsibility to take that plat and take it to Crooks and make sure it meets their criteria. But I do want to, I would like to know what that criteria is. So, because I am probably going to be the #1 stop for these people out in the county to come here and say, what do I need to do? I don't understand what's going on. So I will, by default, be helping these people, guiding them through the process.
Commissioner Heiberger.
So I live more than 3 miles out, but I'm in their circle. So, but I'm just wondering, what recourse do the farmers have in that area?
That may be a question for Kirsten. I don't believe they have any, but
I can probably guarantee you there are no farmers in that area that know that this happened. I mean, I did know that it happened, only because I got a phone call. But I'm just wondering what the recourse is for the people that live in that area that have no clue that this was just done to them.
Call your state legislator. I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant, but what the statute says is once they've done all the things that they're required to do under the statute, now they need to have that, what do they call it, comprehensive plan for the entire area.
they
That's
need to
what
have
I
a comprehensive
understand.
plan adopted for their city.
Which, considering you haven't gotten a subdivision ordinance either, I have no idea if that's been done either. I mean, we know that they've acted to bring this within their jurisdiction. I don't know if all those requirements have been done. So that would be one thing to look at. But as I understand the state law, once they elect to do this, as I think it's intended to afford for smooth city planning outside for the future, but this is quite a large area for a municipality of this size to be taken in.
And
That's a little editorializing, I guess, but, and, you know, Sioux Falls has moved toward them, so I'm guessing that's part of this as well.
I would suppose.
So,
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just gonna say, is Sioux Falls aware of this, Scott, that they have done this? Because I would think they would also be interested in sitting down with Crooks and making some.
I don't believe that the city of Sioux Falls, I haven't made them aware of this yet, and I doubt that, I don't know, to be honest with you. I really don't know if they're aware of it. I will be working with the city of Sioux Falls to let them know that this is happening. I'll work with the planning department. It really doesn't impact the city of Sioux Falls. They're gonna say it's outside of our jurisdiction. Thank you for letting us know. But as I indicated, it would have been so much better if those two municipalities would have worked together and come up with a jurisdiction that looks more like the city of Brandon's and Sioux Falls's, where you have, you know, there's no in-between land that is not, it's likely that there's going to be growth there in that area, and it just would be better if they determined now whose sphere of influence that is going to fall under.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Barth?
I'd like this to maybe be on our agenda in a week or two and for further discussion, but it seems to me that the wavy diagonal curving lines that they've drawn across, you know, how does somebody know on that state highway to the north there, you know, on one corner of the section you're in, on the other corner of the section you're out. You know, you look at the city of Sioux Falls, you look at Hartford, you know, we follow the roads. I mean, it's not just a curvy wandering line, and I think I find that objectionable because it's going to be difficult to administer.
I would note that I'm on that curvy line, so part of my property's in and part of my property's out.
That's the problem we run into then is, let's say I have a property owner like Commissioner Heiberger that comes in and is actually platting a portion of her property that it's one, you know, if it's a whole quarter section then, and that's all in one person's name, and they're platting a portion that's outside of the platting jurisdiction, but still part of that quarter section is in, you know, do I send them to the city of Crooks or not? Because they are actually impacting a portion of that property that's within their jurisdiction by making it smaller. They're taking, you know, they're platting it. It's now a platted property versus unplatted. So there's some issues that we're gonna have to deal with, and I would, you know, if I was counseling the city of Crooks, I would ask them if they are really intending to grow on the east side of the interstate. This almost goes, you know, if you look at this, almost goes to what we call Midway Corner, which is a huge growth area, and would they ever be able to service that, or is that their intent? And that's part of why they need to have a comprehensive plan, is they need to show us that, yes, we intend to grow almost to Midway Corner east of the interstate, which I don't know if that's their intent or not.
Commissioner Karski?
Who holds them to task on this? I mean, who are the regulatory body that says, have you filled in all these blanks? Have you done all these things? This looks like a big land grab by the by the community of Crooks, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I'm letting the commission know that this has sort of surfaced, and that it's something we're going to be dealing with. And I appreciate Commissioner Barth's, comment that we should put this on the agenda. But in reality, there's nothing more that I can do. I've requested the information. Maybe what should come from the commission is a request from the city of Crooks to come in and give you an update on their comprehensive plan and their subdivision regulation, their growth plan that they have for themselves. And maybe that will spur some dialogue with the city of Crooks and Sioux Falls to work together.
Does the city of Crooks even have anybody that they work with in planning and zoning? I don't think they have a staff person on.
I don't believe that they do. They have a building inspector, and I don't know, the major street plan that they adopted was prepared by CCOG. So
This is like, how many square miles?
it's a lot.
40?
Oh,
I live more than 4 miles out.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like 40 square miles or more. And now it's going to take joint action by them and by us for any rezoning requests
No.
that come in here.
No, just platting, just subdivision,
Platting.
just platting. They have expressed interest in having a joint zoning ordinance or joint zoning control, and that is something that you would have to agree to. So that at this point is maybe on the city of Crooks's horizon. They've discussed it. They're very interested in that, but that would be something that you as a commission and the city of Crooks as a commission would have to agree to.
Kirsten?
And that was dovetailing on the comment that I had for you. This subdivision platting authority, they can unilaterally take in. The joint zoning authority rests partially with your approval, and your lack of your approval basically defeats that. I just had a quick question for Scott. As a housekeeping matter, looking at 26.1 in the same chapter, are you designated as that official in lieu of our planning commission as to reviewing these plats
Yes.
that come forward? Okay, so it is your approval or disapproval that affects, because there is a bit of, I wouldn't call it control, but approval process with the county that rests with Scott in whether they need a majority approval or 2/3 approval of their city council as to whether these plats become effective. If Scott disapproves or thinks that the ordinances haven't been complied with, he can disapprove, but they can override it in this case, just as a housekeeping measure. I was just curious as to how that was being handled.
So they can override it, but the county commission cannot?
Correct, as
Even
to
if-
platting authority, not as to zoning authority.
Right.
Zoning authority still rests partially, or rests with you approving a joint zoning ordinance.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you know, when I was working on telephones, I had a lady who was upset that it was long distance to call across the street because it was a different telephone company, et cetera. And her line to me was, and this is here in South Dakota, that when George Washington drew the maps of the states, he didn't intend phone lines to work this way. And I'm not sure that this is how George Washington wanted this to work either.
Anything else for the conversation?
I just wanted to make you aware. So.
Have you had any conversations with the people at Colton other than just a notice? Crooks, I'm sorry.
No, I've reached out to them. I haven't heard back from them.
Some time back, Mr. Chair, they did come and ask us for a joint zoning district
remember,
around
yep.
there, and you know, there's a lot of work involved in that. And being on the planning commission now, you know, when we do joint efforts with Del Rapids, you know, more than half the time they don't have a quorum, and so that gets postponed. And even working with Sioux Falls can be kind of a pain when we have our joint meetings, getting a quorum, et cetera.
And you will notice that even Del Rapids, for example, they don't even have a joint platting jurisdiction. We have a joint zoning control with the city of Del Rapids, but they don't even feel the necessity to have a plating jurisdiction, a joint plating jurisdiction with Del Rapids, and, you know, that's one of our larger municipalities in the county.
Thank you, I think. Any other new business? Any old business? And there's no executive committee, so I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.